what have we got for you today? Well, the Mirror has splashed on a report showing that 60 pupils a day are being suspended from schools for incidents of alleged racism, as the hate in everyday discourse is seeping down to our children, it would seem. There's more on that in the paper, but in short, don't be racist. Okay. Now, meanwhile, elsewhere in what will probably turn out to be quite racist, the second report on the Grenfell Tower fire of 2017 will be published on Wednesday. And the families of the 72 people who died are setting out what they want to hear from it. Jess, there's a story in the paper here about the aunt of a 12-year-old girl who died on the top floor of that tower block waiting for rescue. What's she saying?
She's basically saying she doesn't think that there will be justice at all until some people are behind bars for what happened at Grenfell, because the mistakes are so huge. I mean, we've had the inquiry's been going on for a long time, but there's got to be somebody that actually has accountability for some of the issues that went wrong here. And that's what she said. She's saying it won't be justice on Wednesday. It will be justice when someone's paying the price for all of our loved ones that we've lost in this tragedy, which is, I mean, you've got to feel for her. It is such an emotional thing. And the amount of time that they've been going through this afterwards as well, you know, they haven't been able to get any closure as such, if you could ever get any on this. But it's been a long, long journey for them all. Yeah,
it's been 7 years, hasn't it, since that? I mean, it was pre-Brexit.
Yeah.
Just a year after the vote, Theresa May was Prime Minister. That's how long ago it was. And it was all incredibly shocking at the time, but it seems to just sort of, and obviously the block is still there. And if you're driving into West London, it's a thing in your landscape, but it's just sort of become part of the background buzz, I suppose, of scandal and decay that we've got around us, and no real solutions to it. So this is Sandra Ruiz. Now, her niece, Jessica, was 12 years old. She would have been 19 by now, of course. She'd be embarking on her adult life. This was a tragedy, really, in which this flammable cladding, for those of you who've forgotten or didn't know, this flammable cladding, which should not have been on the outside of a tower block, was put on the outside of a tower block because it was run by the council. And it caught light. And there was a fire in one of the flats. It got out to the cladding, it caught light, and the residents were told to stay put by the fire brigade. Either they didn't realise how quickly this stuff was going to go up because it broke all the building regulations and shouldn't have been there, or they also maybe didn't realise that burning would release toxic gas into the building, which would kill quite a lot of people. Now, there were 72 who died, many of them people of colour, because that's the kind of people that councils stick in tower blocks. And the reason, it's worth pointing out, in Jessica, the reason they put this cladding on the block, right, the Kensington Council, they didn't think it looked pretty enough.
It was to make it look, look.
It's a bit of brutalist architecture. It was a bit concrete and pebble dash or whatever. And, you know, the Conservative Council thought, well, that's a bit of an eyesore. Let's make it look prettier. All those people we don't want to talk to and think about, let's make it look prettier, cover it up. So many of the people who died in there were people of colour. They were children. They were the disabled. And 7 years on, there's still no one in jail, despite multiple revelations of warnings being ignored from residents, planning rules being ignored, failures of more than one organisation. Yes, the Mirror's asking a series of questions of that report at the bottom of the page about how it was all allowed to happen. But am I going out on a limb here if I say, ahead of that report, it was a combination of not wanting to spend money and disdain for the people who lived in that block?
I mean, personally, we will never fully know, because we can only go by what we've heard at the inquiry, and obviously everybody has put forward their own points of view at the inquiry, and we have to sort of gain the truth from all of that and read it in between. But I mean, the feeling has been since the tragedy that not enough has been done fast enough, and why was this ever allowed to happen? And if you also look, there is still this existing problem. There's still the figures, I believe, I don't think we have the exact figures, but it's around like 2,000 blocks still got this cladding on. It's a lot of blocks around the country that are still being worked on. Like there was one a couple of weeks ago, there was a fire came out, same kind of illegal cladding, same issue. Everybody got out more or less. I think there was like very minimal sort of casualties. But the fact that that is still happening 7 years after Grenfell is absolutely disgusting. Surely letting them get away with this will make it harder for those still living with that cladding, says Leslie Smith. Yes, I mean, 100%. A lot of people it's been in all sorts of homes that the cladding's been used. It's been on private, it's been on council homes. The fact that there was a problem with this that wasn't spotted until after Grenfell is quite staggering in itself. And I mean, people are paying for the cladding to be changed as well. That's a whole other issue. When
stuff which, the local authority approve in some way for planning purposes, which should never really. It seems to be that some of the safety tests on this stuff weren't as rigorous or weren't as accurate as they could have been, and that's gone on private properties. It's gone on council-run properties. There are people who own their own homes who are having to pay to be replaced because the way that the Conservative government, sorted out the replacement, it was kind of like, well, you've got to contribute a bit. And why? Why have you got to contribute a bit? Because it's expensive is why you've got to contribute. And
there's people now that can't afford their homes that they've bought because
and they've bought it with mortgages. They can't get insurance. They've got to pay for fire marshals 24 hours a day. And then you've got, of course, council authorities which have got to spend money doing this when they don't have the cash to spare. And it's not safe. And clearly, it's the people who built the block that are responsible. It is not the local authority. It's not the government. It's not the taxpayer. It's the person who built the block. Getting them to do it seems to be impossible.
It's the companies that made the cladding in the first place, and it's the companies that approved it originally for testing that have got the questions to answer for. We got a comment here from Wes G saying Grenfell, the floating signifier of austerity UK, which I think pretty much sums it up, really.
Yeah, it's just sitting there. And this is the thing, isn't it? So, what do you think, everybody? Do you think that the government should be paying for this, the taxpayer? Do you think there's some way we can go after the companies involved? Because as soon as the government was to say, well, we're going to, fine X business £1 billion, this is going to go in a receivership. You're never going to get the money. Rick says the more time that passes, the less people care. The government loves time. Tell me about it, Rick. We're getting the same thing with the nuclear veterans. And this report is published on Wednesday, and it will be Angela Rayner's job to respond to its recommendations because she is not only Deputy Prime Minister, but also in charge of housing and local government. Now, you can bet your bottom dollar that those recommendations, we don't know what they are yet, but they're either going to involve holding some people accountable or spreading it about fairly thinly so that everyone gets a bit of the blame, or perhaps talking about big money being spent either to repair the damage or to compensate or to, try and get it fixed elsewhere in the country. Do you think that this government, Jess, is going to have the wherewithal, financial or political, that Angela Rayner is going to have the influence and the ability perhaps to actually do that? I mean, this is seen as a Tory scandal. The cladding went on under the Tories. The cladding stayed on under the Tories. The tragedy happened under the Tories. The failure to fix it happened under the Tories. It should be right up her street, shouldn't it?
It should be. It should be. And I mean, it is a sort of poison chalice that she's got to take on now, because there is going to be no great answer. It's going to either cost a lot of money that we don't have at the moment. We're already seeing the sort of, some of the things that they're having to do in order to raise money is already unpopular, such as the winter fuel allowance. So they've got that side of things, or, if they don't go after enough people in this, if they don't be seen to be making a much bigger impact than what the Tories made in their many things, then it's also going to fall back on them, and it'll be Labour didn't do this. So it is in a way unfortunate timing for them as a party to be taking this on, because it is it is a huge mess, and it's a huge problem that unfortunately that they've inherited. But hopefully they will be able to do something to sort it out. Whether everyone agrees with the answer, I don't know. As we've already seen with the winter fuel allowance, some of the cuts and things are hitting the wrong people.
Exactly. But there has been lots of talk, I think, from allies of the Labour Party as well, talking about the need to see now a bit of light at the end of the tunnel. And this is one of those things where if you think we voted for a change of government, then these are one of the scandals that we expect to see a change. And there needs to be some kind of assurance and promise and work done so that it doesn't happen again, and that we're not going to keep having these fires. I mean, I think I covered a couple even before Grenfell, where everyone, like I said, most people got out because there were smaller buildings. And Grenfell, just being a taller one, was sitting there waiting to happen, unfortunately. But we'll have to see, won't we? That it's coming out on Wednesday, like I say. I'm sure we'll be discussing this on the news agenda then. But fingers crossed, anyway, that something actually does get done this time, and Jessica's family do get a bit of justice.